everyone? It's I, Zara Khan, aka Fifth Mate Duelist, here with Paulo, who is one of the world's greatest Yu-Gi-Oh players. Here's the thing about Paulo is that, I talk to a lot of people about, who do I get a guest on my podcast, and they're like, you have to get Paulo, because he just plays the game in a different way. They were, very, very, very big on having you on. And so finally, I have you on, and I asked Twitter to give me questions for you. And then I also have questions that I will be asking you from my own questions. And do you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Paulo. I'm from Brazil, which is usually really far from where the events are. I play Yu-Gi-Oh for a long, long time, like 17 years or so, pretty much since the beginning. I'm a really competitive player. I have 3 YCS wins. No, YCS, 2 YCS win, 1 UDS win. And I also have 29 Premier International Event tops.
Wow.
I guess that's it.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. So we'll start with the question we ask everyone is, how did you get into this game?
It's a really random story because I didn't watch the anime, which is usually the way that most people get to know the game. When I was like a teenager, I used to play Counter Striker, the game, like the shooting game.
Yeah.
And in that period of time, the game was prohibited in Brazil. You couldn't play as a teenager, only adults could play. So I had a friend who had some Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and then I started playing like that because I couldn't play something else, and I was forced to play
Oh.
Yu-Gi-Oh, and then I like it. So yeah,
Okay,
then
that's
I'm here.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Accidentally coerced into playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Becomes one of the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Players in the world. I like that story.
that was really random, but yeah.
Okay, great. So let's see. What is the best advice you've ever gotten in your Yu-Gi-Oh! Journey?
Let me think. So one thing that I usually tell people, I never got that advice. It's something that I like to advise people is to, it sounds dumb, but it's like just to play because many people I see, I do a lot of coaching too, right? So I have a lot of people that I talk to about those things. And one thing that is really common, people are really afraid of losing. So they don't even try to play in like locals or regionals or YCSs because they fear that they're going to get badly and going to be perceived as worse compared to their friends. But I feel like the only way to get better is not only playing, but also playing under pressure, like in the environments that you're not super comfortable still yet, right? So what changed a lot to me when I started traveling for events in the beginning, it didn't start that well when I started playing abroad. It was a process. So, and I feel like it only happened because I started doing that consistently. So yeah, I feel like, of course, for me it was international events, but for you or the person, it can be like getting better into locals or getting better into regionals. So yeah, pretty much that. Like you need to play more. You need to put yourself more in positions where you're not super comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's good advice because locals I'm super comfortable. I win sometimes, good amount of times. But then it comes to things like Nats and it's just stressful, scary experiences. So
Yeah, you
yeah.
need to play them more often to be like this is just another YCS. Of course, I feel like it is a bit is a balance between getting you can be too complacent of playing like okay there's another YSS whatever it is YSS it can be like that but it also can be oh my god it's the last event I will ever play. So it needs to be okay I want to do well but if I don't it's fine so you don't die because of that. So it's something between.
Yeah, how do you keep going if you don't do well in an event? Because I didn't do well at the LA regional. I just I just stopped playing. I was like, I don't really want to deal with Yu-Gi-Oh right now. So, how do you deal with that?
I don't know maybe it's a I don't know if it's a personality thing like whenever I don't do well in an event, I just won the next event because I went to make that right. So that's like almost like a fuel for me. Like I usually analyze what happened. There's probably a reason why I didn't go well. It could be I wasn't playing well enough because I'm not too comfortable with the deck that I choose, or maybe I chose the wrong deck, the wrong approach. Maybe I made a mistake in the game. It can be multiple things. So I usually super analyze what happened and try to take lessons of the loss because it's you're going to lose events more often than you win events, way more often. So it's in reality, it's really unlikely that you win an event. So but you can do well. I feel like usually for card games, because there is a lot of variance in the game, the goal is to perform well. That's how I usually talk to people about those subjects. I don't try to win the event. Of course, I want to win the event, but like if my performance is good, the result will probably be good as well. So I see results, consequence of performance. So, for example, I play YCS Niagara like 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, and my performance was really good. I only lost once in the entire tournament, even though I lost in top 16. It was a really good performance. So I'm super okay. Nothing could have done. I already analyzed the game that I lost, the match that I lost, and I'm fine. So it was just a Yu-Gi-Oh thing that happens sometimes. Um, so this is the type of like mental approach I try to bring because it takes time. Like it took me a while to think like that because it can be uh, annoying when you lose and go like, oh shit. So it's more or less that.
Yeah, definitely. What's the best way to prepare for an event?
Um, Depends. Like technical wise, like gameplay or like choosing your deck or prepare
Anything.
as
Like,
anything. Okay.
cause like for me, like for the LA regional, I try really hard. I was going to locals like twice a week. I was playing every day, but I was playing tier, but I kept changing my build because all these new tiers came out, type of a thing. But when I came to the LA regional, I didn't actually feel that comfortable with my deck, um,
Uh-huh.
and like I kept going to time too. So I just got frustrated with like getting draws and stuff like that. And then stuff was beyond my control is that other players were slow, but I don't feel comfortable telling people to play faster.
Uh-huh.
Just because I don't feel like I play super fast. So I like the one time at YCS I did tell someone to play faster, they got really like sharky and mad about it. And then every time I was thinking it'd be like play faster. So like I just don't know what I could have done differently to really prepare for the event besides have more time.
Yeah, I mean, time is really important. Of course, you want to put as much time you can. Like, but I feel like there is one misconception that a lot of people get it wrong, especially in the beginning, is that people get confused on like playing is different than training, casting. Play is like you go to locals and you play, and it's fine. You can play. You can have casual time playing Yu-Gi-Oh. It's a fun game. But when I usually say that testing is playing with purpose. Like when you're testing trying to getting solutions to problems. For example, you said you're playing tournament, so you need to figure out which version is better. So maybe you can create scenarios instead of like randomly playing games against your friends, just like random games. You can okay, I will always go first, and I will always put this teleport in my hand because I want to see how impactful the punk cards are. So you create scenarios to figure out what you like and what you dislike, and you can take notes, you can do things like that. And this is testing. Playing, you just go into locals, and it's fine. Like playing is fine, but when you have a goal, like you want to do better in a regional, I feel like you need to go an extra mile and do some things like those. And this is just one example. I have a much more many more examples. Yeah, something like that. You need to test with purpose.
Okay, so testing with purpose. Is there anything else you would suggest for preparing for an event? Like, for instance, getting coaching or like, finding a testing circle or things like that.
Those are really important too. Of course, coaching is not for everyone. Like you need to pay and shit. Like I'm a coach, I know how it is. I think it helps. Not because I do it, because I can see the results from the people that I talk to. Because pretty much what happens when you're getting coached is because you're skipping some. You're pretty much buying time because the person who's going to tell you things through coaching, they already test a lot of things and they go, okay, you don't need to waste time on this aspect of the game. Like you don't need to test, I don't know, the the branded cards in parliaments because probably the other versions are just better. So you don't need to go through everything, you know. So coaching helps. Testing circles really good. It's usually good to be surround people who have similar goals as you. For example, if you want to play LA regional, is interesting to have other players who are going to play in their LA regional. So more people will be willing to try to test for that event. That definitely works. And slowly you're going to meet more people and talk to more players, and you're going to like make the circle bigger. And you are probably getting better if you do that.
Yeah, like I don't know, finding a testing circle. I have basically like maybe two people that I can play with.
Mhm.
But like I don't want to ask like really good players to play with me because I feel like I'd be like a waste of their time because I'm not like super proficient with the deck. So I'm not really sure where to find like, good players that I can play with
I
to
feel
help
like
me test.
I feel like there are a lot of people in the same situation as you. Usually, you need to find those people first. Because I believe there is a lot of players that are trying to get better, and it is going to be really difficult for you to reach like a really known player and try to test with them because they have those players usually they have their own circles and they are really usually really close on their circles, which makes sense. So I feel like before trying to find someone who you know it's good because they have results is usually better in your position using yourself, like what you said as an example. Maybe it's better for you to find other people in similar situations as you, but they have the will to get better. Because I feel like more important than the knowledge that people already have is the will to get better because that people will be invest in prepare for that event. It's not going to be a person. And since they're kind of the same level as you guys are going to grow together. I feel like it makes more sense like that because if you wait and try to find a player that is more knowledgeable than you to accept that they want to test with you is going to be first difficult to find because again usually those known players they are really close in their circles and we will kind of frustrated because you're going to be like frozen, you can't do anything, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think also it's very hard to find people who know how to test properly. Like the first person to actually two people explained proper testing to me, like Cody. He showed me how to do open hand testing and how to do it
Yeah,
that way. And then Walter showed me the concept of like testing like a card. Like if you want to see how good a card is, you put it in your hand, type
exactly.
of a thing. But like other people don't really know that. And so I remember I was testing with my friend for regional and he was playing Rika Sunavalon and we were playing games and I kept interrupting his Sunavalon and then finally I was like, you know what? Like I don't think I should be interrupting your Sunavalon. I just feel like you're using that to bait hand traps. And he's like, exactly. But it's sort of like, why
Hmm.
didn't he tell me that like a couple of hours ago? Like versus just focusing on trying to win the game. Uh,
Exactly.
so
Winning is irrelevant in
it
testing.
yeah, so it was just like I was frustrated because it was like that's kind of like a huge waste of time. We're supposed to be helping each other growing versus trying to
Exactly.
win. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
You're rather lose on testing and a lot like and learn things. It's important. I feel like you look at a testing session, right? And okay, this was good. Is when even if you lost a lot, but you learn a lot. Like okay, I lost a lot in the beginning because I was using hand trap wrong against the son of a part, right? And then you realize that, or you let's say he didn't know right before, and then you guys realize okay, so now from now on, they're taking notes about that, and you move with that. You know, I feel like the goal is always to learn things instead of winning. That's usually you try to win the events, but any testing, it's fine. You can lose. It doesn't mean anything.
yeah. I think that's a good outlook too, and I think like uh newer players or mid players don't really get that. They get kind of too
Uh-huh.
focused on the winning part of it, and
Yeah,
it's like yeah, it's not a
I'm
tournament,
sure.
so why do you care about winning? So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like you need to find more people that thinks like you. It's not everyone. There are not many of those
Yeah.
people. That's why it's hard
But
to
where do
find,
you
but
find
there.
people? Like,
You usually connect, right? Like randomly. It's usually, for example, I'll give you a random example. Okay, what happened to me? So my main testing partner today, for a while, is Christian Thomas. He's a German player. Okay, I would never met this guy in my entire life if it wasn't for a random factor, which was we were playing on DB randomly. Like I was playing in a fake account. He didn't even know it was me,
uh
and I
huh.
didn't know him. So I was testing for some events. I don't even remember which one, but I was testing for some events. So I was playing games on debut on a fake account. And then I played against him. He was playing a deck that I wanted to test more against. And I noticed that he played well. So in the middle of the game, I said, "Do you want to play more? Like on the rated because I want to test this matchup." And he said, "Yeah, sure, let's play." So we finished that game. We went to the one rated, start playing, and then we start talking. Oh, where are you from? Where are you from? And then we start connecting like that. And then now, like 4 years later, he's my main testing partner. So I connect to him through a random meeting. But why? Because we both of us were curious enough to try to notice that okay, this guy kind of know what he's doing, so it's better for me to test against him. And then we start talking, and of course we have a lot of goals in common, and then now I test with him. But it was a completely random factor. I would never met him normally, organically. It was something that it was forced, but like he didn't even know it was me. It wasn't like I wasn't that like people didn't know me that much since like they know me now, right? It wasn't something like, okay, it's Paulo, I should play with him. He didn't know at first. So it just makes sense, you know? Something like that. It can happen. But you need to
Okay.
be open to that, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I can think of one dude that I met in a remote duel tournament, and like we had such a good match, and like I'll see him every now and then. I'll always test with him before like the
Mm-hmm.
YCS or Nats. So like he would be a good person. I should hit him up and be like, hey, we should
Exactly.
test. So yeah, that's definitely an option type of a thing. I
Yeah.
kind of was like, I joined the Duelist Academy Discord. I was kind of hoping maybe I might find like, people to test with type of a thing, but like, it's very like weird to join a Discord and be like, play with me, because you don't really know what you're
Yeah.
gonna get and stuff like that.
I'm a coach on the List Academy as well. And I noticed that many people in the List Academy, they connect with themselves. So I feel like there's a lot of circles between people there that are starting to doing well. For example, Hihan, which he was one of my students a while ago, he has a lot of friends that, and I think they met through the List Academy, and they have like this circle that they test together, Robin or something. So like it was something that happened, I think, from through the Lewis Academy. So it's definitely doable.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And then maybe like coaches can recommend people or something like that. So
Exactly. That's
yeah.
another thing that I do when I have students that I notice they have like the same type of issue where they don't have a lot of people to play with. I can connect them to other students that I have with the same issue. So that's another thing that usually happens too.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I have a group from I don't have for my foreign students yet, but I will. But I have a group from my Brazilian students because I coach in Portuguese and English, right? So for the Brazilian students, I have this group, and everyone that have like consistent sessions with me, I put it in the group. And then the group, like there's discussions and all those things, and then well, and this is normal. Like people start to talking with each other, and I usually encourage people to go. Okay, you can say in the group, do you someone want to play right now? I want to play against Star Elements, and someone is playing Star Elements, and oh, you playing Sprite, so let's play, and they play together. And then eventually, I will watch their replays that they play against each other. And usually, I watch the same play twice because I watch from one guy perspective, and then I watch them against the other guy perspective, and they have like a lot of things to talk about. That usually is a way because if people are they are willing to pay to get better, they're usually the type of people who wants to get better, right? They're willing to pay. They're already there. So yeah, there's another possibility.
Okay, I like this.
Yep.
Do you want to go over the benefits of coaching?
Yeah, sure. What do you want to know?
What are the benefits of coaching? Well,
Oh, the
okay,
benefits of coaching?
let me put it this way. So before I started
Okay.
getting coaching, I get coaching from Cody, Angela.
Mm-hmm.
Like before got coaching, like I always thought, and I was like broke before. Like I was playing like super budget Shadows because I couldn't afford good cards. So I was like, why would I spend my money like on coaching when I can just spend my money on getting better cards so I can have better results? Which like
Mm-hmm.
now I know is very flawed thinking, but I think it's very common thinking.
Yes, it makes sense. I feel like it depends on how behind you are on cards. Cards are also important. So I feel like if you don't have anything, I think it's better for you to get the cards first. Unless your goal is like, I don't know, get first on BB, where you don't need any cards, right? But I feel like it's important for you to have cards. After that minimum threshold of having decent cards eliminated, I feel like it makes sense to get coaching if you're willing to have some goal in mind. I feel like I said before, I feel like one of the best things, and this is one thing that I focus a lot. Okay, I focus a lot on technical play. I really like to watch replays alongside the person that I'm giving coaching to, because if, for example, I can talk to you here for hours, and we can talk about deck building and which version's better and whatever, right? But the only way for me to know how behind you are in technical play if I see you playing. I need to see because I can't know what you don't know. And you don't know what you don't know because if you knew, you would have played differently, right?
Yeah,
So you don't know
definitely.
yet what you don't know. The only way for me to know that is by watching your game. So usually my coach, of course, I talk about deck building. We build decks, we build side decks, we do side patterns. We can talk about the mental aspect of the game. We do all that. But usually when I have students that do like let's say 3 times a month, like it's more consistent, right? It's not once every 2 months. It's something that is more consistent. I'm not going to talk like 3 hours a month about decks only. I usually like to at least half of that to watch replays, and I feel like I've been doing that for a long time, like all this coaching thing, and this is the best way for me to pass my knowledge to another person through the replays because now you can see how I think and I will explain why. I'm not going to just say, okay, you should have asked this card in this position. I would say why. The context of the situation is this. You should have read that your opponent didn't have this card because of X, Y, you know? And that's usually how I like to do it through examples. And Yu-Gi-Oh is a game that, especially right now, where you don't have a lot of absolutes. Like it's not like you always ash this card against an element. The answer is almost always depends, and usually depends on the context of the situation. And you can only put things in context through example. And he replays the way that I feel like is the best way for me to explain that. So yeah, I feel like that I don't know how other people do coaching, but that's the way that I usually like to do because it's where I can have the best impact on you. For example, I usually say that it's not that difficult to have a good list right now. You just can go to YouTube if you want to see a good tournament list. You can just copy Jesse Cotton, got second in the event. You're not going to miss by much. Like some things change in the meta games, some tendencies, right? Maybe he changed one card here and there, but they are not going to change a lot. But one thing changes a lot. He plays really well. He's Jesse Cotton, right? So I feel like the difference in the end is the gameplay. So in that you don't find on YouTube. It's really unlikely, but you do find lists. So I feel like it's usually better to use your energy and your time in coaching for the technical part because the deck building, which is also important, you have more sources of knowledge because there's so many deck profiles and a lot of things like that. More or less that. That's why I think it's good.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. That's very well said. Very, very insightful type of a thing. Because I know, like, a lot of coaches on Metafy, like, teach deck building, but, like, I've tried to learn about deck building. Like, Cody's taught me some. I learned from someone else, but at the end of the day, it's just like, this is too hard. Like, this is too much thinking,
Yes.
too much knowledge required. I'd rather someone just gives me a list, maybe I edit it a little bit, but I can't focus my time trying to learn how to build a deck. I have to learn how to play the deck because I have limited time. So
Exactly. Yeah,
that's
it's
why I
much
think
better.
technical play is like something to really focus on. And
Yeah.
we're not gonna get into net deck haters who say you have to build your own deck or whatever.
No, you can copy. It's fine.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we have some specific question from Twitter.
Mhm.
So someone said that in Brazil, but in other places, but especially in Brazil, the price for the game is very, very high. So what they want to know is what would you recommend for budget players that want to get into more competitive play, both as general advice and more format specific advice.
Okay, so because of the cards are expensive, right? That was the question. I didn't get
Yeah,
like exactly. Okay.
yeah, like
Uh,
basically cards are expensive. So what do you do as a budget player?
Yeah, I experienced that for a big chunk of my time playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I started as a teenager, right? So between like, I don't know, my 14 until like 18, 19, it didn't work. So I didn't have money to buy expensive cards. And there were always expensive cards in the game. What I did was I was really good. I already played well in the past. So I got into teams here in Brazil, and pretty much the trade back was I will help everyone getting better, but I need cards. So that's what happened.
Oh,
Like people borrow, I got a lot of borrow cards for a big chunk of my life in the beginning, right? When I start playing, now I have my own cards, but in the beginning, I of course you don't need to borrow everything. Like you can buy some things and just borrow uh, here and there. I feel like having a lot of connections. Being a nice person also helps. So like, don't be an asshole or something, right? Like, um, people have more tendency. It makes sense, right? Like to be more willing to like borrow your things if you are a nice person, a helpful person. I don't know. For example, I started traveling for continentals here in South America since I was really young, like 16, 17, 19. So when I did that, I didn't even have the deck because it would be impossible for me to pay for the trip at that time and have the deck. So I always did like this. My concern was to qualify to the event. So when I qualified, I knew that not everyone in my city would go. But since people like me, they borrow everything that I needed to play the event because I was representing my country, representing my city, right? So I always had the deck that I wanted for those events because I could borrow everything. So
oh, okay.
that that's something that you can do. Like, of course, it's not going to be like you have to borrow decks for locals. That doesn't help. That doesn't happen because people will be playing those cards. But at least for the bigger events, not the ones that not everyone goes, um, it was at least for me definitely an option. And I have a lot of help of a lot of people, which is really grateful till now. Like I have friends from back then until today, and they always help me because I was always also really too helpful in other ways, the ways that I could, right? Like through gaming. And that is something that I could learn without having the cards, right? I can play online, I could do other things. So that's one of the things that I did. And more specific advice, like a deck, right? More budget. I feel like that was the question, right?
Yep.
I feel like MathMech probably is something that don't need to play pot. It's a decent deck. I feel like MathMech. It depends on your meta call, but I feel like the first thing that comes to mind was MathMech because the
Okay.
Spartans are.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a pretty good deck.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, thank you very much. Um, so people are also wondering, like, how did you become? This person says the best Yu-Gi-Oh player in the world, living in a country that has almost like one premier event a year.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to play a lot of competitive. I mean, there is of course competitive events here, but they don't happen often enough. And that's an issue because I feel like there was a big difference between when I won't only play one event a year, like big event, right? One big event per year, and then I start playing two big events a year, and then like only 2017, 2018 is when I start traveling like abroad, like US, Canada, Central America. This is only 2017. I played since 2004. So it was like 13 years of my life that I only play around here. And there is a big difference I was really curious always to see how I would be against those known players that I only knew through coverage. Because I was playing well in my city and my country, even my continent, but I always wanted to know, okay, like if I take this those guys, like maybe I'm good enough, right? So I made this effort to try to play abroad, and then it was really good that I made that decision because like I said in the beginning, I feel like one of the best things for you to be more consistent in put yourself in like weird situations. Like when I remember the first round that I played against a known player, like outside South America. It was like an experience, but now I play against them all the time. So you get used to that until I became one of the guys that people know, right? So yeah, it was pretty much that. Like I feel like the fact that I was consistently going really helped me. And of course, you can use that example to every level of the game, right? If you have only one regional, maybe you can try to play more regionals. If you have only one YCS, you try to play more YCSs. Things like those. So I feel like there was a process. I feel that the fact that I started traveling only 2018 forward really, really helped me. And a big chunk of my results are from 2018 forward. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like traveling is definitely like very worthwhile if you can figure it out. Like Twitch helps me a lot with regards to traveling places. Like all the fundraisers and subathons and stuff have been able to get me to all the YCSs and Nats and stuff. So if people can figure out a way to get to the events, then I think it's very enriching. But
Yeah.
I do recognize that's something you got to build up to. Because like, yeah, when I first started playing, I couldn't afford anything. When I very first started playing, it was in Dragon Roll format. I was playing with a Gravekeeper structure deck. Because I just
That would be hard.
And I got second at locals once with it, and I was so happy. I was so proud of myself. But you know, times change. Now I have cards and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah.
What is your favorite deck of all time?
I think Sky Striker. I mean, it was a deck that I had the best results. Yeah, it was a deck that I had the best results ever. So I really like the Sky Striker mirror. I mean, so the Sky Striker is really different before than what it is now. Like what it is now is like mine. It wasn't like that. It was like a back and forth deck. So, and this is the type of deck that I feel like really technical play deck. I'm really focused on that, like I said before. So, this is where I think the experience and all the hard work that I put became an edge, an edge. That's why the best results that I had was through that period, like the best Sky Striker period with Engage at 3, Multi-Roll at 3, like that time. So, yeah, I think it was Sky Striker. But I did like other decks. I played EA for a long time in 2014 and 15. So I like that a lot. I like Salamangreat too, Zodiac. Those decks, also all good decks that I liked.
Okay. Someone in chat is wondering what your opinions about floodgates in the game are.
It's a problem. If it was for me, I would ban every single card that has a lingering effect. It's a problem. It's a design issue within the game. Like it's something that shouldn't exist, especially right now, and especially when it comes from extra deck. Of course, even floodgates that came just a trap, right? Like Rivery, things like that can be really annoying, and they demand an out. And in the way the game it is nowadays, maybe before, like 10 years ago, it was fine to have a river somewhere because the game was super slow. But now the people who combo you with a river face down, and then it's impossible for you to win because not only you need to deal with the board, but you need to deal with the floodgate, and that's almost always impossible. So, yeah, I really dislike the entire concept of having effects that are continuous and need to be responded. And that doesn't demand me for playing differently. When my opponent open a floodgate, like a trap floodgate, right? Nothing that I can do can change the outcome. it's something that I need to draw. So it's pretty much I need to have an out for a card. It doesn't then depends on me, you know. So usually for the game health, I usually think you need to have interactions. I feel like this is the beauty of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like you interact back and forth with your opponent in both turns. And that's the nice part. But I feel like the interaction needs to be through like you try to kill a card, you negate a card, like simple things like that. Not like you can't do an entire mechanic type of thing, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel no, please. I want to ban all of them pretty much.
Okay, so you're definitely on the ban Mystic Mind train, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Not only that, but many other cards, but definitely.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been calling for mine to be banned for a very long time. But now I'm glad everyone's on the train. But I still don't think they're going to do it, which is a funny thing.
I think they will. I feel like it went too far. I feel like this is the one. I hope. I'm a hopeful person sometimes. I don't know, man. I feel like I think this is the one.
Do you play any older formats like Goat or Edison?
Not really. I'm usually too focused on. I did play them when they exist, right? I was there. in both formats, I did play them a lot. I played Goat for a long time in 2007 or 6, I think, 2005 or 6, and I did play Edson in 2011. I even topped a WCQ playing Plant, but no, not recently because I usually like to use my entire time that I have to play Yu-Gi-Oh! To test Yu-Gi-Oh! For current. So no, not really.
I feel it. I tell people I can't be bad at 2 formats. I can only be bad at 1. Do you have any Banlist predictions besides Mystic Mine?
I feel like they will ban Mystic Mine this time, hopefully. I think I don't know. It's a prediction, right? I feel like they will go to ban Sight as well. I feel like it's a card that is on everyone's radar. It's a really old card, really easy to ban. It's not like anyone would be sad if you ban Sight. And also, I believe they are not going to directly touch the new decks, like Sprites and Elements. I feel like they want to use to try to sell those cards and get more money for that. There's a lot of support coming from both decks. So I think they are not going to touch them directly, but maybe they do some indirect ban, not bans, but maybe limitations in cards like Instant Fusion, Hop Fabrics. What else? I mean, maybe those two, or maybe some Curious, Snow. There are cards that you can force those decks to play a little bit different. It's still pretty good, but different. Not directly touch like Element or Sprite cards, you know? So, and maybe Brave. I feel like they are going to touch Brave too, because I feel like it's old enough for them.
Yeah, I feel it. Okay, we have some more questions in chat. Any decks or cards that you thought would be good but ended up disappointing?
Decks of cards that I thought would be good. Nothing that comes to mind. Not really. I mean, probably there are some things, but I can't recall anything right now.
What about the reverse? Anything that you thought was bad initially but ended up being like super good?
I think recently, I thought Rico was a bit worse than it was. I don't think it's like insanely good. Oh yeah, Yugioh. Yugioh is one of my students, by the way. Yugioh sets one card. It was Crossroute. Crossroute. I thought it was good. I mean, it's a different example. Like Crossroute, I thought it was going to be bad, and it was bad. because I didn't thought Crossroute would be really good. People experienced with the card for a long time. In the beginning, try to put one-off hand traps to make Crossroute live, but that didn't work. It's more an OCG thing because Maxi is so oppressive that they need to play every single out possible to the card, and I feel like people thought that something like that would happen here, but it didn't. I feel like it's decent design. I don't usually not like hard interactive hand traps. if you want to combo going first, you need to feel the pain of getting hand trapped. Like, it's not nice to go through full combo just installing the game. So at least you need to have to put some thought on that. But I don't like cards like Talon and Koba the Great. The Cross Out at least has a drawback that you need to put some bad cards in your combo deck just to make that work. And sometimes your opponent will have the exact card that you didn't put in your deck, and then Cross Out is not going to work. So I feel like there is a deck building decision alongside the card, so it's fine. I don't like the other alternative like Call by Talents, those that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's sort of like I see where you're coming from for sure.
Yeah.
This question, I don't know if it's a joke, but what was the last deck with less than 12 hand traps you played?
Okay, let me think. Okay, first, it's really hard to justify not playing hand traps. There's usually some few opportunities in the modern Yu-Gi-Oh that you can play. That's in my opinion. Okay, many people disagree with me, but there is only few opportunities that you can play some board breaky-ish deck. But usually, the tendency is that whatever your opponent is doing on the other side of the table is going to be so oppressive that board breaks are not going to help. If they do help, it's probably because the opponent did something wrong and not because the board breaks were good. So in the higher level of the game, which is usually what I am aiming, I think it's weird. For example, I decided to play Sprite, those last two events, right? Rio and many people, many good players didn't play Sprite. They played Tournament instead. And the mirror of Tournament, it's atrocious. Like, it's absolutely so bad. So you're pretty much coin flippy. If you have the intention to win, it's so hard for you to win with that because you just insta lose every single game one that you go second because of Dweller. So I was trying to avoid that. I'm not saying that the hand traps are magical solution, but it's definitely better than a 0% win rate going second against a good player, which it is the case for me if you're playing mirror inter elements. So I don't remember the last time I played Last 12. Probably 2021 when I played Dino. It was a going second deck with Lightning Storm, but it was a one-time thing. I don't even remember, but it was probably Dino in 2021.
Okay. Yeah, I just ended up liking decks that don't really play hand traps. Which, I don't know. I think hand traps, like, help a lot. It's like when I would play a deck with hand traps, I just felt like it was easier to play versus, like, having no hand traps and having to break boards. But, I don't know. I think also, if I were forced to play hand traps more often, I'd be forced to pay more attention to figure out the choke points and things like that, which would make me a better player. Versus now I kind of just zone out because I'm like, I can't do anything.
Yeah, it's not that easy to use the hand trap because they are usually low impact, like Veiler, Ash, like they don't have like this pure impact, right? The shifter. Many times it's combination of low impact, so you need to be not only knowledgeable of your deck, but you need to be knowledgeable about other people's deck because what is using a hand trap? Using a hand trap, or not only hand trap, but interaction in general, right? Use an interaction, it's prevent your opponent from doing something. You can only prevent your opponent from doing something if you know what something is. So you're using a hand trap on a fiber because you know if you let that go through, it will lead into something. So you need to know other people's deck. So when you have this type of approach, you need to know your deck really well, but also everyone's deck really well. I usually say to my student that in order to get better in the game, if I gave you a meta deck in your hand, you could play that fine, like not as well with the deck that you are playing currently, but you're not going to be completely clueless what's happening, and that's usually happens when you play some type of super interactive deck, which is the case of hand trap decks, because you have so many points of interaction. Sometimes you have 3 hand traps and 2 hand traps, and you need to see the context of your hand. There's so many variables that makes the answer for the questions that were used like really different than just, okay, you just always ash this and always Veiler that. It's not like that. There's a lot of context involved. And you need to know the other people's deck because depending on how they start playing, you have clues of what they have and what they might have in hand, but the order that they use the cards, and then with that, in the context of the situation, look at the power level in your hand, then you decide if you want to ash this card or not. So it's not like, okay, I always ash, I don't know, the field spell. It's more than that.
Yeah, that's true. That's the hard part too. Is like understanding context and situations and things like that.
Yeah.
Plus, like what you interrupt depends on your hand too. Like if you have one hand trap versus two hand traps, you might hand trap differently. So I think it requires a lot of like thinking and practice too.
Yeah, and also a lot of analyzing. I usually like to rewatch almost all the games that I play when I play online, right? I have this tendency to at least skip through the game again just to see if I missed something, even in the games that I won. It's all the games that I lose for sure, but even the games that I won, I like to take a look to see if I could have noticed something different. And this type of exercise always helped me to like to keep tabs on what can I change in my gameplay and if I could have used the hand traps in different spots because they could have that card and why I didn't notice that he could have this card and then I start processing that information and turn that into knowledge, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, like when I was playing Drytron, or not before I was playing Drytron, like everyone was like, "Oh, you always ask the alpha." Like that's like what you always do, ask the alpha, type of a thing. But then when I started playing Drytron, I was just like expecting people to ask alpha, and if they did, then it's like sweet, I can do everything. But like for instance, like I did Alpha Tribute Benten, and they asked alpha, and it's like, but see, that doesn't demonstrate understanding because the whole reason you ask the alpha is to stop from getting to Benten.
And the Bentang, yeah.
So I think
Makes
people
no
get
sense.
too fixated on like, oh, here are the rules, and I think people kind of need to learn, myself included, need to learn better about that.
Having the rules is easier, right? Like if you have like this rule where you always ask alpha, it makes your life easier, right? And maybe a big percentage of the time, maybe that's the correct play, but you're not going to have the right play in some percentage of the time. And that the example that you gave is like it's a kind of obvious one where if you think a little bit about it, but some people just go like, hey, I need to ash alpha, 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 and they don't think a little bit why I'm ashing alpha, what's the purpose of this ash, you know? Most of the time it was to prevent anything, but the thing's already there. So maybe it was better to hold the ash a little bit. And then, for example, many times I'll use Dryton as an example since it's a deck that you're familiar with. I feel like depending on your hand, see, I always use the depend thing. Depending on your hand, you ash the Nova because you need to not cut the play, but you need to cut the follow-up. So the name is already a problem because you need to evaluate how strong or weak your hand is. So depending on that answer, you need to be more aggressive with the hand traps. And you need to get lucky. Sometimes you use hand traps in a way, okay, I'm so behind in this game that I need my hand trap to work really well. So you use that like especially aggressively, and then because you need to compensate how bad your hand is. Sometimes your hand is really good, and then you can play around something. Sometimes you can't. So see, it's the same ash against the same card, but the answer is different.
Yeah, definitely makes a lot of sense. So I have a lot of people in the community that I have are more on like the casual side, but like they they want to become more competitive, and that's what I was like. I started off playing broke action dolls, as I call it, and then slowly became more competitive when I could get the cards and practice. So like, what is kind of the best way to jump from being casual to competitive?
Like you need to try to get all the information that you can get from the competitive side of the game. You have a lot of YouTube channels, you have a lot of streamers that can do that. That like provide insightful online and free insights of the game, right? Like you have Pac, you have Nash, you have Joshua. There's a bunch more, right? I have a do spring as well. There's a lot of people, right? So you need to first be inside that thing, you know, like inside this whole, okay, those are the competitive guys. They're going to like situate me on this competitive side of the game because it's fine. You can be casual, you can be competitive. You approach the game whatever the way you want, right? So that's the first thing. And then I feel like I do like Dueling Book. Many people dislike it, but I feel like it's a competitive environment as far like after you reach some rating. It's competitive. Like it's an average level. I feel like it's a good testing. I know it's super annoying sometimes because DD, but you can always quit. That's something that I never understand. Like because if you're playing against someone who's really annoying on the beat, you can always quit. You lost some internet points, but whatever. You just go for the next game, right?
Yeah.
So if your intention is to get better, and this is all about intention, I feel like those things can help. I feel like trying to get as much knowledge possible, like watch the Konami streams about the YCS's look at deck profile so you know who the good players are and you can follow what they say. It makes sense. You need to know what the good people say, not because you need to know so you can implement that, but also you need to know because you will know what other people are looking at. For example, if Jesse make a deck, it doesn't matter if you believe the deck is good or not, but you need to know. That's the thing. You need to know what he used the last YCS and got second with. You need to know because people will look at that and you don't believe, you don't need to agree. You need to know. So you need to do this with most of the known players because they are really, what's the word? Impactful, not impactful, but like impactful in the how the community perceive things, and it may sometimes you can take advantage of that. So because they're going to create trends, so that's another thing that you can do to enter this competitive realm. You know, a trend. Yeah, Angel of Zara said it's a trend.
Yeah, definitely. Because people like they'll look at what topped and then they'll just like copy it, or base it very closely to it. So if you don't know what's topping, like you're at a disadvantage because you don't have that insight into what people are probably playing.
Yeah.
Like when I started looking more at deck lists, like even if I wasn't interested in a deck, I would still look up deck lists for it because I wanted to get a rough idea of what cards people were playing. So that way, when I played against them, I can think like, oh, these people usually play like one toad in all their lists. So if I get rid of this one, then I don't have to deal with it again, for example. Or like, they usually play two, or they might play rivalry in the main, so I have to prepare for that. So
Yeah, this is meta game knowledge. Yeah.
yeah. So that's definitely good.
Yep.
Okay. So how do we find you?
So I'm a lot on socials. Usually my socials are Paulo PRRJ Goncalvez. So I'm on Twitch. On Twitch I'm PRRJ Yugioh. Also kind of easy to find me. YouTube same thing. I'm also on Coach on Metafy and Duelist Academy. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. Always PRRJ. So PRRJ is not that difficult to find me. It's really easy.
Yeah, definitely. And when do you stream on Twitch?
I usually stream 2 times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. In English, it's Thursdays, and in Portuguese on Tuesday.
Okay, great.
And I usually cut the most important parts of the stream on YouTube, which is PRJ Yugioh.
Okay.
So if you can't see the stream, you can see the most important parts on YouTube.
Okay, good. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, sweet. Is there anything else you want to say or talk about, or any questions you have for me, or anything like that?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I think that's it, right?
Okay, sweet. All right. So, guys, leave a comment, subscribe. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Episodes come out weekly if I'm in a good mood, and if they don't come out regularly, I'm sorry. I'm trying. But check us out, and then I'll put Paulo's links in the description. And we are going to have a duel after a short intermission. So, yeah, see you guys in a bit.
See ya. Bye.